Hey, good morning. Glad you guys could be here. My name is Darren Wallace. I'm the head of communications in North America for Crop Science. Thank you very much for coming into our booth. I just want to do a quick introduction of this panel. It is about the next generation of agriculture and succession planning. We have an esteemed panel here, and Pam is going to drive it and really talk about it. What I wanted to share with you is I think there is no topic more important than the one that we're talking about today, because it's about youth, it's about the succession of farms, it's about bringing the next generation along, and it's something my family is personally facing as well, and it's probably one of the biggest topics that's going to face American agriculture. So I'm thrilled that you're here paying attention. And I'm going to turn it over to Pam, but I want to personally thank all of our panelists today for the valuable perspective that they're going to bring to today's discussion. So welcome, thank you, and I'll turn it to Pam.
Thanks, Darren. Well, welcome everybody here to our third now Advanced Farming, Advancing Life panel. As Darren said, this is probably one of the most important things that we can do this week is to talk about the current generations and the future generations. We've had some discussions about sustainable, and guess what? We're not going to be sustainable ourselves if we don't make sure that we provide a legacy to the people that follow us. So it's my pleasure to be with these people today. We all know from the USDA census that the average age of the average farmer is somewhere around 58 years old. I wonder when that's going to change, because I keep getting older, but that statistic doesn't. But in any case, only 2% of the population, everybody knows these facts. But that's what really drives us to today's discussion. As Darren said, we've got some great people with us today. And first I'm going to go down the line here. First with me is, of course, Jeff Waller. And Jeff, I just want to welcome you to the panel today. You're from Wisconsin. I know there's a couple of people from Wisconsin. In fact, I think you guys know each other. That'll be evident later as we get into the discussion. But just tell me a little bit about where you're located, a little bit about your operation and your succession planning. We won't go into great detail, but just kind of give me the thumbnail sketch of it.
Yes, thank you for having me here today. I'm a cash grain farmer in southern Wisconsin, basically corn and beans, conventional corn, and some food-grade beans as well. I have been married to my wife Tammy for 30 years. I have a daughter, Savannah, who graduated from UW-Madison in 2017 and is working for a marketing firm in Naperville, Illinois. And then I also have a son, DJ, who is 20, who is on the farm and will be farming with me, and hopefully is he will take over someday and we'll transition the farm to him. Thank you.
So are you kind of in the early stages of the process, or how long have you been kind of working with your succession plan?
Well, yeah, we definitely are early. It's DJ's 20, so it's not something that we're forgetting about, but we do have a plan in place, and we do have certain people like attorney, our accountant that is advising us along the way as far as how to have it set up, down the line as far as doing trusts and things like that. So if and when we get to that point, it can make it a lot smoother for DJ to take over the farm. But he's been involved from an early age, and he's actually been renting his own farm from an outside person since he was 17. So this fall that's coming now, he will be harvesting his fourth crop, actually, at his age. So again, he's hands-on, and he has experience, and he has the passion for it. So we definitely want to set him up for success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what this whole discussion is about. Next on our panel, of course, is Bob Arndt, and you're a neighbor of Jeff's. You've been in the succession planning. You've already kind of taken care of a lot of this. Tell me about your operation and kind of a little bit about your area in the succession planning area.
Thank you again for having me. I'm third generation myself. My sons are fourth generation. We farm in Rock County, La Prairie Township, southern Wisconsin. We raise corn, soybeans, vegetable crops for Seneca Foods, seed corn for Hartung Brothers, and we also feed cattle, and we have a peppermint mint still. We grow peppermint, which we get the oil from, extract the oil from the peppermint plants and send it to Japan. So our business is wide ranged. I guess we hope that if something's not so good, maybe something else will be good. We have my two sons are involved in the operation. They both are graduates of Iowa State University. They came back to the farm. They want to be there. They're involved every day in the decision making. They are owners. They have skin in the game. So they are, I would say our next generation is, we're still working on the plan. I have brothers that have children that are off the farm. That's the sticky part. So it's never easy. We just keep working at it.
All right, thanks, Bob. We're going to get into a lot of the specifics of each of these gentlemen and where they are in their succession plan. We're going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the successes, and hopefully some of you out there in the audience that might be going through this, it might help you a little bit. Next on our panel, we have Greg Nickrent. He is a Senior Relationship Manager at BMO Harris Bank. And Greg, for more than 30 years, you've been working in the banking industry, but I hear you're a farmer too. So tell me, what do you think that is some of the biggest mistakes working with farmers that you've seen in succession planning, or what's one top one that comes to mind to you?
The most common mistake I have seen through the years is lack of communication from the between the generation that you want to pass the farm down to. They're not always on the same page, and that could be a problem. You know, if they got a goal outside the farm, or they've got a wife the son's got married and the wife's got a different plan, and so lack of communication is probably the biggest problem that I've seen. And then also not surrounding yourself with a competent team that like an accountant or a lawyer or somebody out there that can give you good advice. That's the most common mistake that I've seen. Yes.
So you guys, you never have any problems with communication at your houses, do you, Jeff? Huh? I mean, you've never had any of those sticky situations.
Well, in our particular situation, as compared to Bob's, it's been a little bit simpler for us just because of the family members that are involved. Now, I'm the second generation. My dad started farming in 1960, took over for another neighboring farmer that didn't have any children, and he started there. But in that situation, from my dad to me, and hopefully from me to my son DJ, it's more simpler because it's just father to son, father to son. That being said, I did have two sisters that were off farm when it transitioned to me, but again, communication was key from early on. They understood. My parents involved me from an early age. They involved my sisters, so everybody knew what the score was moving forward. And the important part that my dad expressed to me and the family was keeping the base farm intact. And from that standpoint, they had it set up where my off-farm sisters were compensated in other ways, and they were okay with that. As I explained to me, my parents, said that if you're going to be on the farm and take over, you're going to have to work for what you get. And so, there was helpful things that went along with that. I lost my dad when I was 25, so being involved early in the process definitely helped us in that situation and made it easier for me. Taken over at a young age of the planning process that they already had in place, and if it was not communicated to me at an early age and having that plan that he had, I know it would have been a lot tougher. And we can talk about things like now with a qualified advisor if you have in place, and I know from right now when my dad passed away that we went through probate. It was just a will, and there's tools available, I think, out there now that I'm learning that different people can help you with as far as trust and structure of it, depending on your farming operation. And every farm's unique, so you're going to have to tweak it to your individual needs and use those people that are out there and ask those questions so it can help you make that transition easier. As far as, like you said, there's such a thing as avoiding probate, I know, that can be important if that works for your farm. Talk to your accountant about step up in basis, things like that when that, because for tax issues and things like that, inheritance, it can be huge and it can be very important. So if I can make one point that we've experienced is to take away from that is have a plan in place, communicate it early, and use the people that the outlets that you have out there. So Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, you never had any problems at your house with communication, did you?
I think we'll talk about that later.
But really, Greg, this is one thing that I've learned working with farmers over the year on their legacy plans and their succession plans is that Jeff has made a lot of good points, and so has Bob, is that they really need a group of people or experts. You were just talking about all the sources that are out there, and if there's one thing that we want to take away today, it's that there is people who can help you with that communication or conflict resolution. Nobody has any conflict in their families, right? But there are experts that can get people around a table and really work with you so that you're not always the one that maybe is driving that conversation, or maybe there's something that the younger child in the group or the younger generation is wanting so badly to say to dad, but he just can't bring himself to do it. People like that can really help that conversation and help a lot. What other kind of things, what other kind of people do they need, Greg, that's around that table or that's kind of working with them? And we talked about the legal aspect. What else?
Yeah, your banker's a key person in the operation too. I mean, he's part of the team. There's a lot of good conferences out there that have a lot of good ag conferences that have a lot of expert panels out there that you can talk with. And this, again, talk to your neighbors, talk to people in your neighborhood that have been successful with the operation and the transition they've done, and get those people involved too, and talk to them, get their ideas, get their input, and get a name from them. And I think that's critical too. Yeah.
All right, all good discussion about succession planning. We're going to come back to some of these different subjects in just a minute, but I feel like I'm kind of being remiss about getting to Jill and Serena down there, so let's move on down the line. Next with us is, of course, Jill. Jill Bramble, you're the Senior Vice President, Chief Resource Development Officer at National 4-H Council. Now, how many out in the audience have ever belonged to 4-H? I was a city girl, and even I was in 4-H, so I know that that was in the old days when it wasn't so much in the cities, as we'll hear about in just a few minutes. But Jill, just tell me a little bit about how you've seen 4-H change, I guess, over the years, just since you've been a part of it, or when you were in it as a child.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Pam, and thank you to Bayer for convening this important conversation. I think as the largest youth development organization in America, 4-H reaches 6 million young people. And for those youth who have not had the opportunity to grow up in rural America or on a farm, it's become increasingly critical that they understand the importance of science in their everyday lives, and also the importance of the career opportunities that are available to them with science-related focus in both agriculture and beyond. I believe last year about 20,000 jobs in the ag field were left unfilled. And so we feel at 4-H that we have a moral imperative of ensuring that all youth in rural, urban, and suburban have an opportunity to do hands-on science and connect them to career opportunities.
And I know that you've worked with Bayer quite a bit with the Bayer Science Matters program. How's that going?
It's fabulous, and it ties directly into our work with science. And Science Matters has brought young people from rural and urban communities together to do hands-on learning through science curriculum and activities. We've connected with the assets across Bayer with their employees and their content, and in communities where their employees live and work, and also had the opportunity to bring young people to Washington to learn more about career opportunities in ag and important issues around agriculture.
You know, we talk about the succession planning, and each one of this for you guys. I mean, it's your life, it's your farm, it's your legacy, and yet Jill brings out a good point. You know, we've got to make sure that we keep those kids interested. You talked about that. Do you think? I mean, were you guys just lucky in that all of your children wanted to come back, or was there ever any that didn't want to? And how did that go? And how does that all work into it? And then do we need to look to resources like 4-H and some other things that maybe we can get more workforce in our farms?
I think, Bob, why don't you, I'll let you go and field that question. I mean, Bob actually was...
he's going to let him, but now he's going to talk for him.
Well, no, okay, Bob, go ahead.
I love that.
Well, Bob was our county fair board president for a lot of years, and he's had more kids go through 4-H than I did, and we all were in 4-H as well. But yeah, go ahead, Bob. I don't want to take up your time.
I think that I'm lucky. I have two sons that were born farmers. When they hit the ground, they were in their boots, and if I'm walking ahead of them, if I stop, they run into me. You know, that doesn't happen every day. I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed. I have two daughters that are wonderful young women that have their own careers, that grew up farming in 4-H, had lots of projects, did chores in the morning before school, after basketball games at night, whatever. But they chose other paths, and that's fine. If they wanted to come back and farm, they would have had their opportunity, but they chose not to. So I'm lucky in that respect. As far as 4-H goes, we have to have, personally I don't have to have, but there's farmers that need young people that are interested in the business, and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to find them. They have a legacy that they'd like to continue on also. Pam, Jill, you know that 4-H is important, but those kids need to learn about science, learn about how things work, because they might have an opportunity someday to go work for a farmer, and maybe they can work into a position to be part of that farm, or they can start their own legacy. There's no way for a young person to start in this business unless he's connected somehow with someone. So whether it be your family or if it be through 4-H, a great avenue. Please, thank you for what you do.
Yeah, good point there, Bob. Now, Jill, you know, he's talking about... I even see a lot of in a lot of the things and farmers that I've talked with, maybe it's a neighbor kid. You know, maybe he doesn't have a son, and maybe a neighbor kid's like super good at technology, and they come into the operation. But you find a lot of people. You work with a lot of people, and we were visiting earlier this morning about just letting the consumers know more about agriculture to even see if they're interested in it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's so true. So beyond the career opportunities that are available in ag, our focus has also been on understanding how science is important every day. So that's important for consumers to know where their food comes from, for consumers to have an appreciation of science and sustainable practices that allow us to feed a growing population. So there are those that will want to pursue agricultural careers, but it's also critically important to the ag industry that we increase the appreciation of ag at the consumer level as well.
Yeah, and not only the appreciation of it, but the rest of the food chain of how it's delivered and all those other different things. You know, I think that one of our purposes here today is to not only look at succession planning, some of the nuts and bolts of it, we're going to get more into that, but let's talk about what do we need, what do you think the youth of America needs today in order to make sure that we have these people coming in? So very, very last panelist down there, Serena Woodard, you are from, is it Eufaula? Eufaula. I wasn't even close. Oklahoma. You're a 4-H member, a senior in high school, at the 2018 Youth in Action Ag Pillar Award winner. You've got so much in your background, but just tell us a little bit about how your background, but also you've done something called Woodards Workshops, and I'm really interested in hearing about that. So you're a person that's really involved. Tell me about yourself.
Yes, thank you. So I have been involved with 4-H since the age of 5. In Oklahoma, we have a Cloverbud project that you can be in. And then I joined as an official member at the age of 9. The whole reason I joined is because of my sister Megan. She's a little bit older than me, and she's my #1 role model. So what she did, I did. After she graduated, I wanted to try to find my own path, and I started to show boar goats, which is something completely out there compared to what my family does. Ag was never in the picture for my sister or for my parents. So whenever I started showing, it was really kind of a leap of faith. And through that, I found that not many of my friends or teachers or anybody that I talked to on a regular basis knew about agriculture. So that is when I decided to start teaching my Woodards Workshops. Woodards Workshops are workshops that I personally teach to youth between the ages of 3 and 18. At these workshops, I teach a basic ag lesson. Some are over gardening, hydroponics. We also have agri-science and beekeeping. I teach them just a plain generic lesson so they can just have a little bit more experience on what goes on with farmers and ranchers and in the ag industry. After that, they then make a craft. So if they're in 4-H, they can enter it in the craft contest, the county fair, that sort of thing. And if they're not in 4-H, I hope it will inspire them to join, or at least they will have a memory to take home.
Wow, that's quite a history there for as young as you are, and you've really stepped out and done a lot of neat things with your leadership skills and making sure that those people are informed. Well, let's get back to our growers and the nuts and the bolts of transitioning your operation to the next generation. Now, Jeff, so it's probably how long before your son is full-time on the farm? How old is he right now?
My son's 20 right now, and in my opinion, he could come full-time anytime. Obviously, we could use the help, and he's good help, but he's a little young in the process as far as, the management, type situations. Yet he's learning as we go. As time moves along here, obviously he gets more comfortable. He'll be taking over, hopefully, more of the management responsibilities for me to kind of, ease my load a little bit. But one of the big things that I've learned, and whether it's 4-H or my son being younger and this younger generation that's coming up, is the technology part. As far as the farming goes, technology has changed farming, dramatically in the last 10, 15 years, and it's a big part of what we do now, and it's going to be moving forward in the future for agriculture. And what my son brings to my operation right now at this point, it's a huge help, is that this generation, his generation, has grown up with computers in their hands. And when we grew up, and I still do it today, I'm still the old school. I still like to use the pen and the paper, and that's good. But already I've seen with DJ coming on the farm, and like I said, having his own farm, and the technology that we have in our equipment now, he can download off the monitors from the planter and the combine, and he's generating the field maps, and he's doing the technology part of the computer stuff that I'll admit that I struggle with. It's a learning process for me, but it kind of comes natural for that young generation since they've been there. But that's going to be a huge help, for my operation moving forward. The bookwork side of it, he's come to me and said, "Dad, why are you doing it this way?" And he looks up stuff online, and as far as the banking goes, and so in my opinion, and this younger generation, that the technology side of it that these guys grew up with is going to be a huge help, and that's what I look for with DJ moving forward. Most of my operation is where we're headed with that, and the help that he will provide with that. So.
All right. What about you, Bob? You've been longer in the transition process, so you're neighbors with Jeff, and you've kind of watched how he does. Now, he talks a lot, and I've talked with him off mic just about his farming operation, and I've heard a lot of farmers say, well, the first thing my kid has got to do is go to school, get a good college education. Some even say, I don't know if you've heard this, Greg, or been around clients that say, I want my son or my daughter to work a year off the farm. get some experience with someone else before they come back. I know for you, Jeff, we talked a lot about that. In his particular, and probably because from where you came from, when your dad passed away, you're a doer. You're a grab hold and do it, and it's awesome that that family has that relationship. So the main thing is that you have to do what's right for your own family. But what about you? Are you the same as he is? Was yours different? What do you want from your children?
I think every situation is certainly different. And I, like Jeff, my dad passed away 27 years ago. He had cancer, and my dad was kind of a tough nut. He kind of kept things to himself, and he used myself and my older brother for labor, which was fine. And we got to know how everything worked. Boy, we could fix anything, do anything, he could do as well. And as he learned that he was not healthy as he'd like to be, he gave more responsibility to us. But I think we never really got the gist of the whole deal until it was time, which is okay, because we had our succession plan already in place. We knew what was going to happen. We knew how it was going to work. I, on the other hand, am much different. My sons graduated from Iowa State University. They both have degrees. They both came home to the business, wanted to be there. Part of our corporation rules and regulations, if you want to call them, is once they come back to the farm, they have to work for 2 years to show us what they can bring back to the operation, and then our board of directors can accept them or say, no, we're not interested. Doesn't matter if your last name is the same. You have to be valuable to us, which they absolutely were. They both came back. They both worked their 2 years, got accepted by my family, our brothers, and said, yep, bring them on full time. So that happened with the first son, happened with the second son. They want to be there. They're fully invested. They know we have meetings every Wednesday morning at 6:30. After our chores are done, we have a farm meeting. And the management, we all talk about the same things. Whether they get what they want, it depends on what everybody wants. But they are involved in the situation every single day as they go. So they've kind of built their way into the business, which is the way to learn. As far as experience is a great teacher. At this time, I'm still around. My brothers are still around. If they have questions, they can ask us. If there's something they don't know, we're there to answer the questions, and they got a lot of good ideas. An old guy a long time ago told me, whoever I decided was going to take my place, they better be twice as good as I am and be able to work twice as hard. And he is absolutely right, because things change so fast now. It used to be if you stumbled and fell down, you had a chance to get up. Now somebody runs over you. So you need to be right there on top of it every day, all the time. I'm blessed. I have 2 sons that are doing that, so very lucky.
Well, it sounds like you're pretty far along in doing a lot of those things. I'm just interested in asking, were all of those things, as far as having the weekly meetings, was that something that was already built into your mantra? Was that something that you just did on your own, or was that something that you kind of learned through the process of your succession planning, that you needed to have those meetings just to keep everybody in sync with everybody?
I think it goes with the territory. As we grew up, my brothers, I have a brother that's a year older. I knew where he was going before he went there, because we grew up together. We worked together from day one. I have a brother that's 9 years younger than myself that came into the business at a later time, and I think we all knew what was going on. But as we have more people involved, everybody needs to be on the same page, and that's just the way to do it on a Wednesday morning, or whatever day you want to pick. But then you can go over the nuts and bolts and the financials and say, we got this many cattle sold this week, this many are coming next week, we got this corn marketed, this is what we're going to do today, this is what we're going to do tomorrow, and kind of have a game plan. Maybe you'll never end up being plan A because it's plan B or C or D, but at least we start out that way. So we've graduated, we kind of figured that out as we went. It just was more important that everybody got together and kind of had a solid foundation on that once a week. It helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, how about you? You're in the finance portion, so any words of wisdom that you can give to these 2 guys, or have already given to these 2 guys, or our audience out there, about what's some of the number one things you need to make sure that you're covering when you're doing succession planning?
Again, it's just making sure everybody's on the same page. both Bob and Jeff have done a great job with their what they're doing, and particularly as Bob said, they've got a good footprint and good plan. I love the weekly meetings. I've got a lot of operations out there that I've worked with through the years that didn't communicate that well, and lo and behold, they had problems. But yeah, Jeff, your son didn't go to college, but it's not like he's fitting right in and taking the reins and doing a good job, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. And Bob, like you said, have them go off to college, make sure they understand what's going on the real world too, as far as away from the farm, come back to the farm, show their worth, and it sounds like it's working really good for both of them. Yes.
All right. Well, let's also, if I ask you, we talked about it a little bit before, but just kind of give me some resources. I know that, again, working with some of the farmers I've worked with in succession planning, so a lawyer, an accountant, maybe people over everyone to kind of make sure that everybody's coordinated. Do you ever have any problems with the different entities fighting with each other, or are they pretty much working toward the same goal, so it's not as much a difficulty?
They're pretty much working for the same goal. Yeah, I haven't seen too many places where they've fought against one another, but they are working towards the same goal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jim, we've heard it from Jeff and Bob and them referring to 4-H. Let's talk a little bit more about how they said that they really got their kids involved early. Again, what are you guys doing over there? Give me some examples of some things that you're doing to really see what you think that we need to get more into if we're going to make sure that we have enough of the next generation for ag.
Yeah, exactly. I think we need to make sure that all kids have hands-on experiences in science, whether they're in 4-H or not. I think it's that hands-on learning where they can experiment, they can try, they can fail, they can learn from mentors in their community about how science connects to agriculture is critically important. And we do that through school in some places, through after school, or the traditional club model where many of us were involved. But I think it's critically important to find ways to inspire kids through technology. That certainly is an area that we see that draws many kids in from diverse backgrounds. And then once they take hold, we see examples like with Serena, where they are influencing their peers and they're making a big impact on their communities, and we need to do that by the tens of thousands.
Yeah. Now, Serena, so you're our young person, you're our guinea pig today. You're our expert resource to the next generation. So, what do you think this next generation that's coming up? What do you want? What do you need? How can we help? Not only here at Bear, but also just the farmers. What can we do to help? Or just give me what your wants and your needs are looking for jobs.
I'm going to kind of play off what Jill just said. We are a very hands-on generation, and we are not afraid to go out and try something. In 4-H, we learn by doing, and so if you give us the opportunity, we will most of the time at least try it once. And if we love it, that is how we find our passions. That is how I found out I had a love for agriculture, is by being hands-on with the goat project area. And through my goat, I was opened up to all these different windows, and that's how my Woodards Workshop started. So you never really know how far your passion will take you. But also people my generation, they just need that drive for something. So I was fortunate enough, as I said, to find my passion as a 7th grader, and it's going to take me for the rest of my life. I have that set for me. But other kids, they just need those hands-on learning activities in school, in the classroom, instead of listening to lectures and doing worksheets and that sort of thing. We need hands-on experiments that they can do. And also, as she said a little bit, we have a lot of technology in my generation. We have phones, we have laptops. Almost all of our work we do at school now, is including my concurrent classes, is through technology. So we need something where we can put our passion and technology together to make that work.
All right. That's good news, because we've got plenty of that for them, don't we, on the farm. So I just want to kind of sum this up and talk just a lightning round, let's say, especially with you farmers and Greg. What's the biggest missed opportunity or biggest mistake that maybe you've made in this whole process?
Tough question, Pam. Missed opportunities as far as me individually or as our farming
just
operation?
Just as you worked with the succession
Or
plan, maybe something, a
son?
mistake you made, or what do you want to do different, or what would you have done different that you haven't done? Have you done everything right? Every single thing right, Jeff?
No, absolutely not on a daily basis. But yeah, it's kind of a touchy subject when you talk farm transition and transferring to the next generation with family members involved, and it can be sensitive from the standpoint of you could have some hurt feelings and some damaged relationships if you don't try to do it right. And from that, thinking about those, what we would have done different, I think if I go back in time with my mom and dad and what's available today, and we touched on earlier, is talk to the experts in the field or the outlets that are out there. Trusts are available, like we talked about. If you want to get to that point and actually having your next generation set up properly, talk about those things and what they mean. And if you don't understand them, involve your family members that are there too, so they can understand it and take advantage of some of those things that maybe you don't think about on a daily basis. And it's easy for any of us to avoid the subject, not talk about it, and that's kind of the easy way out. But it's not going to go away. And the important thing is to approach it, head on, have those tough conversations, sit down with your parties involved, and communicate and get their input. That's going to help, and like I said, when you ask about mistakes, well, I can only talk about me. I think my mom and dad, if they went back for me, would have been a trust, because we had to go through probate and things like that. But again, when it comes to the farming industry in general, every farm is different. There's not a cookie cutter. I think you could take neighboring farms and they're structured different, and different situations. Like Bob is a lot different than me. There's a lot more parties involved just on their farm on a daily basis than what we are. And then he's got extended family as well that they need to think about. So, if you're talking about maybe mistakes that somebody could make or that we made, is the biggest thing maybe that anybody could take away from this is don't avoid it, because it's only going to make it harder, if that situation happens and you don't have a plan. But communicate to the next generation and the parties involved, and hopefully you can come to an agreement and make the decision that's best for the farming operation to continue in the future.
Greg, I know you're in charge of the finance of the group, but I got to tell you, conflict resolutionists are probably the biggest help that I've ever seen someone get involved with, and it addresses so many of the things we've talked about. It's a neutral party. They can, if somebody gets heated in the argument, rather than you saying, oh, well, you're just a darn stubborn, rather than that happening, she can call a timeout and say, okay, you know what, I think we're going to cool off here for a little bit, and let's all agree to meet back here in 15 minutes. Let's everybody take a break. That takes some of the emotion out. Or if you've even, and sometimes it's even hard getting that meeting pulled together, isn't it? Getting those people together and with that conflict resolutionist. But that's probably the number one thing that I've seen time and time and time and time again. Communication is the hardest part, I think, of succession planning. You've got to be able to communicate not only your wants, but your needs, from whether it's this generation or the next generation, and those may not always jive. Bob, any mistakes that really stick out in your mind, or missed opportunities?
Well, I think probably the hardest thing for our families has been, I have two brothers, both have 4 children. Those children are not involved in the farming operation. So my two sons have come back, put in their time, got to be where they are probably should have earned some sweat equity. They're not getting paid as much as they could have got somewhere working for John Deere or whoever they would have went to work for. So as our plan is in place, eventually as they become more involved and become more ownership, you think it's going to be okay. Well, now all of a sudden the farming business has been pretty good. You know, we're lucky that we're in the right place, the right time. We do the peppermint. We have good income every year. Things are working pretty well. And all of a sudden these other kids from these other families have their hands out and say, where's mine? Do you really have the same goals anymore? Things have changed. How do you keep everybody happy and have the farm survive the way it is? We built this giant over 40 years, and to take it apart doesn't work for me. So that's the conflict right there. So how you get that done, we're not exactly sure. We're working through it, but it's not easy.
Greg, how often should a farmer, I mean, we've got two guys here in different stages. You're farther along in your stage than you are. How often, I mean, it's a living, breathing thing, right? Because things like he was just talking about change. So how often, or is it done when it's done?
Oh, by no means, no. That's the biggest thing that I've seen is lack of versatility in your plan. Sometimes they set up something that an entity that you can't change, you get locked into it, and lo and behold, the tax laws change. And I think that's the biggest killer of that transition plan is tax laws. And if they change on you and you can't adapt to those laws changes, you end up having to sell something that you build up over generations, a couple generations, you got to sell just to cover your tax bill. So you're talking about family members with their hands out. With Uncle Sam with his hand out, that's the worst thing you got to deal with. So I guess have a plan that's got some versatility to it to adapt to the changes in the tax laws, so you don't have to sell off a farm or an asset or something that you tried to keep to pass on to that generation. And because that's the worst thing to have happen is have to sell something just to pay taxes. Yes.
All right, great, thanks. Yep.
If I just might say, I think that we've tried to be versatile and change with those laws as they've moved, but at the same time, you know, I was always taught, and maybe it's wrong, but farmers farm and farmers own the land. So how do you get these other people satisfied when they're not farming? It's pretty hard for them to own the land unless you're going to, I don't know, it's really a tough spot, and it's tough, and we're working on it, but it's really hard. It makes people crazy. I'm sorry, but
yeah.
You know, all of a sudden you lose sight of what did you really want. Do you want this thing to go on or not? That's a hard one.
And it's true. I mean, there's all kinds of complications. Jill, maybe that's why we need to make sure that the people understand that maybe are some of those spouses that come into operations understand farming better.
You absolutely, and I think not necessarily a mistake, but just a comment on we have so much more work to do to make sure that all young people, whether they're growing up in Berkeley, California or St. Louis, Missouri, have opportunities to learn about hands-on science and the importance of agriculture. Many of us on the panel had the opportunity to grow up on farms and understand that purposeful nature of the ag career. Not all kids understand that, and it's critically important that we create those opportunities across America for young people to be connected to science for agriculture and industries beyond. Our young people are going to be driving the economy, and we need to make sure it's part of the conversation and opportunity that they have.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank all of my guests for being here with us today. They're going to be around, so if you've got any questions about their succession planning or even resources, I bet Greg would be a great place to start with that and help you just decide what it is that you need to do. We want to thank you so much for being with us here at the Farm Progress Show, here at our Advanced Farming presentation, and thank you so much to everyone for being with us today. Appreciate it very much.